Well, good evening to everyone. It's Joe Chaffee here on this Tuesday, the 16th of October, as the month just rolls right along. Hope everybody had a great day. We had a nice, cool day here. Temperatures that didn't get much above the mid-50s in most places. And one of the surprises for me last night was being woken up. Well, I was woken up for two reasons. One is that I ate at my mother's last night, and that sometimes is problematic because she's just a little bit too generous when it comes to the garlic. And while I like it, I'm at the age where that sort of stuff keeps me up, and it did. But the scream, if the garlic didn't get me, the screaming wind would have. We had a gust front that moved on through, and I thought maybe it was just localized to me over Long Island, but after talking to a number of my friends, it was screaming wind in a lot of places last night with gusts over 40 miles an hour, just howling for at least several hours. But that's long gone now, and we are now waiting for the arrival of the next cold front, which is still another 18 or so hours away, but that's going to bring in the next shot of cold air that is going to be coming down into the eastern part of the United States. We're going to take a look at temperatures right now. We're going to look at the long range. I looked fairly deeply into the models today, and it looks a little muddled going in toward the last week of October. And I know there's been a lot of chatter with regards to the possibility of a storm toward the end of the month. And we'll take a look at that and what the models are doing right now. Just a heads up before we get started. Let me just do a little bit of quick business here, and that begins with tomorrow. For those of you in the great state of New Jersey, whether it be northern, central, or if you want to make the trip, even southern New Jersey, the Springfield Library is where I'll be in Springfield, New Jersey. That's at 66 Mountain Avenue, and the phone number is 973 376-4930. If you want more information, you can go to their website, which is sfplnj.org. And that's at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. We're going to talk the winter. We're going to talk current weather, the current weather pattern, what we're seeing going forward. We'll talk also about maybe a little bit about Hurricane Michael and what transpired and what we could learn from that particular experience. So come on out, Springfield, New Jersey, at the Springfield Free Public Library at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening. And again, if you are in the New Jersey, New York City, Long Island, even Western Connecticut, the Hudson Valley, if you would like your library to have me out there, have them get in touch with me. I had one yesterday for Long Island. That'll be coming up on December 12th in Babylon, and we'll talk more about that as we get closer to that particular event. Also, just really quick, let me just remind everybody, for those of you who have not joined yet, or perhaps you're considering it, consider joining the Patreon platform. It's my platform of where you get exclusive posts along with my website posts. You get them ad-free. You also get exclusive videos just for Patreon members, and they got one this morning, and I'm going to try and do one most days, especially on days where weather is an issue. I'm going to make sure to get them done on those days. Every once in a while, I like to take a day off when things are slow. The Patreon link is on the descriptor to this live stream or the descriptor to this video. I will put it up on the chat board as well for those of you who want to join up. And Israel, you mentioned yesterday, by the way, you were having trouble because it wasn't able to verify your email. You probably need to go into your email and send back a verification email once you try to subscribe. So just bear that in mind. So here's the link, putting it up on the board, and it's good. We get the business part out of the way early. Thank you for those of you who have joined up. It's a great way to support my channel. It's only $2 a month for the bottom tier. If you're feeling a bit more generous, you can go higher. And those of you who are in need of some professional stuff, you can take the higher tier. By the way, and you can message me anytime, and I will respond. All right. While we look at temperatures, and I'm going to start in the southeast because it's hot someplace. That frontal boundary did not get all the way down into South Carolina and Georgia, where temperatures are quite warm this evening. They've actually come off the highs, but we were in the upper 80s and lower 90s here across much of Georgia and North Florida. South of that cold front, you've got a west wind, and that's going to heat things up. It's not particularly overly humid, but it is definitely very warm. And those 80s actually go up into southern North Carolina, and then you quickly, once you jump to the other side of the frontal boundary this evening, you'll notice that the temperatures do drop off considerably. Low 60s in southern Virginia, and areas from northeastern Virginia on up to my neck of the woods, eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, didn't get out of the mid-50s today, and we're in the upper 40s and lower 50s right now. I do not expect temperatures to really fall very much, if at all, very much tonight. Where there's clear skies and where there are light winds, you'll probably see temperatures drop down into the 40s. But you'll probably get down into the mid and upper 40s. Some of the cold spots will see temperatures down in the upper 30s in the northern and western counties of New Jersey, northeastern Pennsylvania, and parts of the Hudson Valley. But we are about to see the next quote-unquote warm-up. And this is one of the signatures of the pattern that we're in right now, is the fact that we are seeing very subpar warm-ups with these fronts coming through every couple of days. There's no real ridge that develops in the eastern part of the United States, like we've seen, where you get these warm-ups that hang around for days and days so the temperatures can keep going higher and higher. That's not happening now, because just as soon as one trough pulls out, you get a little bit of ridging building in, and then that breaks down because the next ridge comes on in from the west. Oh, and Israel, thank you for reminding me. By the way, I will be live streaming from the Springfield Library tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. So if you can't make it, you can certainly watch it here on YouTube. Okay, so you got to look at the temperatures. We are also seeing temperatures rising, by the way, a bit across much of the Midwest, where it's been cold, and they're back up into the 50s and 60s. But this is going to be short-lived because you've got the next cold front that's dropping down. You can't really see that cool off yet. We've got temperatures in the low 40s up into northern Minnesota and up into the upper peninsula of Michigan, but the colder air is up on the Canadian side, and here we have temperatures that didn't get above freezing today. That's the next cold air mass that's dropping down from the north. The radar tonight is busy across the southeast north of the frontal boundary. So you've got some rain in western North Carolina, a small area of rain moving into southern south central Virginia, back across much of Tennessee, and into northern Alabama, northern Mississippi. Most of this is moving straight to the east, so we're not going to see this rain moving northward. There's a weak wave that is going by that's taking that rain out. Still getting plenty of rain back through parts of north central Texas, where we still have flood watches up, and there's a little bit of rain going on as well in parts of the southwest. Otherwise, the weather through much of the country is actually fairly quiet, particularly in the northern Rockies, the northern plains, and on up into the west, where it's bone dry. Remember, they got a ridge in the west and the trough in the east, so it's going to be dry. The action in the southwest, if you notice, it's turning counterclockwise. There's a bit of an upper low that's sitting out there, and that is creating the issues with the circulation, the upper low spinning around, so you've got that counterclockwise motion underway. So with regards to watches and warnings, just want to show you on the Weather Service's watches and warnings map tonight, you really don't have a whole lot happening. Those flood watches up in central Texas, we've got, I believe that purple should be, those are winter weather advisories for some of the mountains of New Mexico, and a few red flag warnings in the southwest. Otherwise, it's pretty quiet. We don't have any frost or freeze warnings up for tonight, which kind of makes sense because of the fact that we're in between air masses. But indeed, we are in between air masses, and we're about to see the next round of changes. So we'll go to the new GFS, and then we're going to touch upon the long range. Maps, of course, courtesy of tropicaltidbits.com. Make that your go-to source for weather maps. It's a free site. You can look at almost every model imaginable that's around. So that's tropicaltidbits.com. Okay, so the next cold front is by tomorrow morning dropping down into western New York and northwestern Pennsylvania. You can see the colder blue lines here, these thickness lines, measuring the relative coldness of the air and how deep that cold layer is. We're looking at a fairly deep cold air mass for this time of year. Remember, it's always relative, coming in, and that front will push through into the northeast and the mid-Atlantic states. This front's going to have a little bit more push to it, so it's going to make it further south. And the core of the cold air will come in Wednesday night into Thursday morning, so there's likely to be some, maybe not frost so much, except in some valleys where the winds, where it'd be sheltered and the winds might drop off, because there is a bit of a gradient. It is going to get kind of breezy here during the day tomorrow into tomorrow night, but there is a bit of a gradient there, a pressure gradient overnight Wednesday night, so temperatures are likely to be a bit more uniform because of that, except in protected valleys. And then this high will be building overhead Thursday. It's probably Thursday night into Friday morning. You'll have some widespread frost down even into the mid-Atlantic states until the high pulls out. And then here comes the next cold front, which by early Saturday morning is just north and west of Chicago, northern Illinois into central Iowa, and dropping southeastward. This high coming down is the coldest of the three cold air masses that we are experiencing during this 7 or 8 day time frame, going back days ago when the first shot came down. This is going to be the coldest of the bunch, so that Sunday morning will be down in the 30s and low 40s. The daytime temperatures here, both tomorrow and for Sunday, in many areas will not be getting out of the 40s in the northern mid-Atlantic and northeastward from there, and some areas going further north will probably not get out of the 30s. So that high pushes down even into northern Florida. It clears the Gulf Coast and into the Gulf of Mexico. So everybody's going to get a break here from this. And then that high goes out, and we already are seeing the next cold front here this is Tuesday the 23rd, which is as far out as we have on this new GFS. So I think this is probably a good time for me to switch off, and we're going to take a look at what's going on with respect to the longer range, because there's been chatter, as there's always chatter about these things, days and days, and sometimes it seems like it's weeks at a time. Hang on one second, folks. Trying to get this paint box to open up for me, and there we have it. Okay, so here's what's happening here. I've actually jumped ahead. I want to come back a bit. So we're going to start off with the upper air for Saturday. Okay, and I've already kind of pre-drawn a lot of things here with respect to what's going on in the upper atmosphere, your troughs, your ridges. So it's pretty obvious. You've got this deep trough that is in the east, and you have this strong ridge that is out in the west. And as a result, you've got a flow that's coming from northern Canada. Actually, if you just kind of follow the trail here, if you go up north of Alaska and follow, say, if you want to follow the 516 line and just kind of follow it down, that's runs down into central Canada, into the Great Lakes, and then turns into southeastern Canada. So that's telling you the flow of air. You follow the railroad tracks, and the air masses are coming down one after another, and each one of these troughs, these red lines that you see, really mark each cold shot of air that moves on through. So we're going to be getting another cold front on Saturday, with the next shot of cold air that's coming in for Sunday and for the first part of next week. Strong ridge out in the northwestern part of the U.S. This is showing us the flow. The strengthening ridge is showing us the what we refer to as the positive north of PNA, Pacific North America pattern. It's strongly positive. That's actually, by the way, a combination. When you have higher pressures up in the northwest and you have lower pressures off the south in the southeastern U.S., and there's also another area that goes into the calculation, and that is the area near and north of Hawaii, along about between 120 and 160 degrees west. So if pressures are lower there, out in the Pacific, higher pressures in the northwest, lower pressures in the southeast, when you calculate it all, you get a number. If it's positive, it's telling you that there's a ridge in the west, and the bigger that positive value is, the more important it is with regards to the strength, the amplitude of these troughs, and the potential possibly for storm development. Now, I've brought up these indices and I've kind of marked them off a little bit, so we maybe get a little bit of a better taste of what's happening. Unfortunately, today the branch of NOAA that handles this stuff did not update these maps from yesterday, so I was kind of stuck with what they had. From what I looked at the overall models today, it didn't look that much different, so I thought for illustrative purposes we could use it, and also the fact that it really doesn't change the equation here in terms of what we're looking at going forward. The things that you look for with these, of course, you look at the state of where they are now, and you've got that ridge in the west, PNA positive. You've got weather systems moving along, so there's no blocking, so the NAO is positive, the North Atlantic Oscillation, and we're getting cold air masses because the East Pacific Oscillation, which is the oscillation of pressures in the East Pacific, much like it is in the Atlantic, when that's negative, that usually favors cold. Colder than average temperatures in the eastern U.S., and that's what we have now. But there are changes coming, and it's the change. Whenever you see these things change, either going from strongly positive to strongly negative, or even just a trip to the neutral line, or if they're going from negative to strong back to neutral and then back to positive, or just back to the neutral line, when they make those big moves, that's when you have to pay attention, because that's telling you that the atmosphere is in turmoil. If you have a high reading and it's stable, well, there's not much change going on there. But when you have it changing in either direction, and having it doing it in a very fast way, then you're seeing big pressure changes, and this can create storm development. Where the storm development is a whole other matter. But you've got that strong PNA, which peaks out at around the 21st, 22nd of October. This is going to coincide, by the way, with another shot of cold air. We're talking about a week from today, so that's probably when we'll have another weather front that's beginning its approach. And at the same time, the NAO, the North Atlantic Oscillation, crashes. It goes from positive, a fairly strong positive number, 200 plus this time of year is pretty strong. It rapidly crashes down to neutral around the same time frame, and then goes negative for the rest of the month. So this is at least indicating a blocky pattern may be trying to develop toward month end. Then, of course, you have the EPO, which is somewhat negative, rising toward the neutral line at about the same time that the NAO is changing. So we're seeing some changes in the whole upper pattern forecast by the teleconnections, and this, when you see these changes like this, and when they are as radical as they are, you have to keep your eyes open for the possibility of storm development. And of course, that has been part of the conversation that's been going on across much of weatherland and social media. But it gets kind of muddled because you've got a lot going on here, and this is why we don't go too crazy looking at models out much beyond the 7 or 8 day time frame, because a lot of things can change, and there could be some more changes. In fact, I would expect that these models are going to change some more going forward into the longer term. But here's where we are for this weekend. Deep trough in the east, strong ridge in the west, deep trough at 160, trough out in the Atlantic at 50. Now let's jump to 3 days after that, and go to a week from now. And we're using the European model, by the way. So at this point now, one of the big changes, and this is this is around the time where the NAO crashes to neutral and goes negative, we have a very strong upper high that develops north of the Azores. So there's a bit of a block that's trying to form here. This is causing the NAO to go negative. It's also pinning this vortex in eastern Canada so that we're still getting some flow of cold air, ridge still intact in the northwest, and you have a trough off the west coast with an upper low that's sitting near the Aleutians. The other player, by the way, is that the jet coming into the Pacific is split to some degree, and you've got some energy in the southern stream sitting there in the southwest. So the keys for any kind of storm toward the end of the month will be, does the vortex in the east hold? Is there going to be another system in this long flow out of Canada that's going to drive southward? Is the ridge in the Pacific Northwest going to hold? And is the trough that's off the west coast going to hold? Or is that ridge going to get crashed with energy? And there is energy here. That actually should be a red line here that's out in the west. I mistakenly made it purple, but that should be red because that's a trough there sitting off the west coast. I just realized that you draw these maps sometimes. I try and get them done, and I try to be careful, but I am human, rumors to the contrary, and I do make errors. So again, that's a trough. That trough may try and crash into that ridge and flatten it out. That could be the reason why that PNA index drops down toward the neutral line toward the end of the period. And indeed, when we look at the European going out a few more days after that, that ridge does break down in the west. Okay, and this kind of puts this actually throws a bit of a monkey wrench in the outlook going forward if it's correct. If that ridge breaks down, there's going to tend to be more progression of that southern system going west to east. And of course now you've got a trough just off the east coast. You still have an upper high there that's sitting north of the Azores and trying to ridge up toward Greenland. That's at least keeping things chilly. In fact, there'll be a fairly big surface high that's going to be up in the northern lakes if this is correct. But that southern stream of energy is going to have a real difficult time lifting up the east coast like this. So you look at this, and we can't really see what the European does beyond day 10. It's almost useless to go to the GFS because whatever it's showing is already radically different from the last 3 runs, and each run was radically different from the prior one. But if the ridge in the west temporarily breaks down like this, you're probably going to wind up with some kind of surface low moving across the Gulf states and then heading out more east than anything else. And perhaps eventually some of the energy that's coming into the west would create some sort of storm that moves across the northern tier toward the Great Lakes. I think that is one possibility. And then you wind up perhaps dealing with a strong cold front that approaches late in the month with a very, very strong southerly flow ahead of it, and rain and thunderstorms, and then it swings on through. This is just one option here, folks. I don't know if this is going to be correct. I don't think any of us knows, but there's a lot of variability here. One of the interesting things I am seeing is higher than normal pressures building across the polar regions, and I think that's something that we should watch for model trends going forward, because if we wind up seeing some high latitude blocking, that could indeed favor perhaps a stormier pattern developing across North America, and particularly for the eastern United States as we go into the end of the month and head into the month of November. And by the way, please bear in mind the fact that, Chloe, you can come in. No worries. Bear in mind, by the way, that we're talking about a high degree of variability here, and we're just still trying to kind of get a grasp of how the pattern is evolving. So there's nothing here that's going to be put into stone. There's leave room for changes to occur going forward, because there will be. I promise you that. Okay, so let's come back to the GFS model, and this is where we left off, which is next Tuesday. So we'll see what this run does, and we can take it out a little bit further. So there's this next high that comes into the east for the middle part of next week. So we're only out to 198 hours at this point. Just want to take a look at what the upper air looks like. And again, here the GFS also, by the way, does have the same idea as the European, so I'll back it up. Here's the rotation of those the troughs in the east. The next one for the weekend, that ridge. You see how the ridge, by the way, the upper high kind of builds a little bit in the southeast over Florida, but it never really pushes all the way up the east coast because the next trough is rotating around and it squashes it. And then that lifts up, and you still have troughing here off the east coast. The upper high over the Azores starts to move eastward. So I'm going to wonder whether that block is going to give way. And you do have crashing energy into the northwest. So my guess is that you're probably going forward on the new GFS, which we have out to 192 hours. There's some time frames that are missing here in between because it jumps from 138 to 162. So one lifts out, another front comes through around the 22nd of October, and then as far as we can go out now, which is at October 25th, you see the trough off the east coast. A little bit of a ridge builds up to the west in the Ohio Valley. The flow's more westerly across Canada, so that kind of cuts off the polar flow to some degree. Still got the low near the Aleutians with energy crashing into the northwest. And you've got the southwest energy, which, by the way, picks up a new tropical system that the model develops and brings over the southern tip of Baja. We'll see if it lifts it up and this winds up getting involved in the longer term, or maybe it gets left behind. But the bottom line is there's a lot of flux here going forward, and I think we need to recognize that. And so it's all subject, it's going to be certainly subject to more change in the coming days. Oh, one other thing to look at. Since we are now moving into the last 45 days of the hurricane season, we can take a look at what's going on right now, which really isn't too much in the tropics. You've got some weak systems there moving along. Disturbed weather that's in the Caribbean is moving into Central America, and that's not going to develop. It's likely to come out on the other side, on the Pacific side, and develop there. Looks like we have a big upper low out in the East Central Atlantic, so that effectively, I think, kills the Cape Verde season as far as I'm concerned. So from here on in, it's a matter of what we get that's homegrown. Maybe off the, we might have to look perhaps eventually into the Caribbean for one last gasp of tropical storm development. Don't be too shocked, by the way, if things just kind of shut down at this point, because we're rapidly approaching the point where sometimes the hurricane season on the Atlantic side does shut down, and this could very well be, that could be an indicator of an early start to the winter. It doesn't work all the time, but it can be an early start. So let me come to the chat board tonight. I see I see Delvin is on tonight. He hasn't been around in a while. 99 Wolves, Cullen, Timothy Veltman, J.S. Sweetie, always good to see you. You're yanking the vegetables out before, well, you say you've been, you had to pull them out at the end of August. Hopefully next year's a better year. The rain in some places has been insane, and that has ruined a lot of crops this year. But now at least we see that pattern calming down just a little bit from the standpoint of all the excessive rain. How far out can we forecast the winter season? Asked Ryan Kong, the Asian weather boy. Again, I will say, and I'm going to have to repeat this over and over again, but I'm not a long-range guy. I have a difficult time getting my head around it. There are a lot of people out there that are much better at it than I am, and you really ought to look at their stuff and see what they're saying. At best, we could talk about things in generalities, but it's been my experience, and it's a lot more fun, frankly, to just watch it play out and trying to figure out that part of the puzzle. anyway, I couldn't give you a straight answer, and I don't know that anybody really can give you they can make their forecast. Maybe it'll be right, and maybe it'll be wrong. And by the way, I would just caution those of you who, a number of people have gotten so excited over this chilly weather pattern that's developed here in the middle part of the month of October, with temperatures 15 or more degrees below average. There's no guarantee that this lasts much beyond the next couple of weeks, or perhaps maybe it goes on through November and into December, and then after that it could flip to something else, or maybe it is something that's going to lock in and lock in for quite a while. There's no way for us to know this, so we just have to watch the patterns as they evolve. And I think as a forecaster, if you're cutting your teeth as a forecaster, especially if you're a short term or a short to intermediate term forecaster inside the 2-week or 10-day time frame, it sure is a lot more fun figuring it out, in my view. Good evening to Stephen Franco. Of course, we know Scott Briller was on, so we said hi to him earlier. Raymond has popped up, always looking for severe weather, but he's not going to find it in the cold pattern that we have. And let's see, a quick hello to Michael Zimmerman, who came on early. John Curry, Doug Crum is on. 5,000 subscribers with no videos has dropped in. So has Eric P. and Roy Wilson. All right. Oh, and I can't really leave out Fire Truck 1988. Usually seems like the even into odd winters tend to be snowing. I don't know what the stats show on even versus odd years. I don't think that would work very well where I am, where most of the winters over the last 18 or 19 winters have been on the snowy side. Oh, Joseph Pan jumping on. Good to see you. Good to see you on board tonight. Let's see. Let your Lakewood, New Jersey Library, Israel, know that I'm available, and if they have programs that they schedule, let them get in touch with me. I'm easy to find. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and a whole host of other assorted places. All right, folks, going to call it a night at this point. Once again, just really quick, thanks for being here. Remember, tomorrow night, the Springfield Library in Springfield, New Jersey, so make sure you come on out if you can at 7 o'clock. We're going to be talking winter. We're going to be talking about Hurricane Michael and what just happened and what we could learn from this. Of course, there's more weather exclusive posts on my platform on Patreon, so take a look at that. I'll put the link up on the chat board again. And thank you for those of you who have joined up. Exclusive videos for Patreon members. Usually I do those in the morning, and other posts along the way. And tonight, of course, the Joe and Joe Weather Show on Facebook at 9:15. So just go to my Facebook page, meteorologist Joe Chaffee, and tune on in. Have a great evening, everybody. If we don't see you later tonight on the Joe and Joe Show, we'll either see you on the Patreon platform, or we'll see you here tomorrow at 7 o'clock when I live stream the library presentation from the Springfield Library in Springfield, New Jersey. That's at 7 o'clock.